Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop trying to be someone, a quiet alliance begins to show up on its own? And have you ever wondered why peace feels so close, yet the mind keeps reaching for another thought as if silence were dangerous? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are entering a guided style teaching, but I am going to share it as a story you can live inside, because presence is not an idea you collect. It is a reality you recognize. The heart of this talk is simple. You do not have to build presence, because presence is already here. What you practice is letting presence shine through the person, meaning through your habits, your reactions, your rules, your voice, and even your pain, without turning everything into a self-centered story. And as that happens, something deeply practical changes. Your suffering reduces, your wisdom increases, your compassion becomes more natural, and your life begins to follow a cleaner cause and effect. Let us begin like this. Imagine a person who has spent years trying to fix themselves. They have tried willpower, optimism, discipline, therapy, spiritual books, motivational speeches, productivity systems, and endless self-analysis. Some of it helped, some of it made them more functional, but there was still a subtle strain underneath, like a background tension that never fully disappeared. The mind kept whispering that something was missing. The mind kept scanning for the next problem. The mind kept rehearsing the past and negotiating with the future. Even on good days, the person felt a little chased. One evening, the person sat down, not because they were inspired, but because they were tired. They did not light candles. They did not set up a perfect atmosphere. They simply sat down and admitted one honest truth. I cannot keep living like this. The constant inner commentary is exhausting. The constant self-improvement project is exhausting. The constant effort to control life is exhausting. And then something interesting happened. Because they were tired of controlling, they stopped trying to control for a moment. They simply noticed what was already happening. The breath was happening. Sensations were happening. Thoughts were happening. Sounds were happening. They did not create these things. They did not have to force them. Life was already moving. This is where the doorway appears. The doorway is not a dramatic mystical event. The doorway is a simple noticing. There is awareness here. There is a knowing quality that is present before any thought labels it, and the person could feel it, not as a concept, but as a quiet space in which everything appeared. At first, the mind tried to grab this moment and turn it into a new project. The mind said, "Okay, now I am being present. Now I must keep this. Now I must make it stronger. Now I must succeed at meditation." But the moment the mind did that, the space contracted. The person felt it immediately. Presence became effort. Silence became strain. Then, but deeper understanding arrived, not as a sentence, but as a shift. Presence is not something I do. Presence is what I am when I stop compulsively doing in my head. So they tried again. Softer. They let the breath be the breath. They felt the body from the inside, not as an object, but as a field of sensation. Warmth in the hands, weight in the legs, subtle movement in the chest, the gentle rise and fall of breathing. They did not need to analyze any of it. They simply allowed attention to rest. Now, here is the crucial part. The person did not try to get rid of thoughts. Thoughts came anyway. A memory, a worry, a plan, a judgment, a random phrase, a song snippet, the usual mind weather. But instead of following the thoughts like a dog chasing every passing car, the person simply noticed them. Thought, and then they recognized something that most people overlook. Thoughts are not the problem. The trance is the problem. The suffering is not created by thoughts existing. Suffering is created when you believe every thought, when you identify with every thought, when you turn every thought into me and my life and my problem and my story. So the person practiced a gentle separation. They did not push thoughts away. They did not fight them. They did not feed them. They simply let them float through awareness like clouds through the sky. In that gentle separation, they began to sense what it means for presence to shine through the person. The person is the collection of roles and habits and personality patterns. The person has preferences. The person has history. The person has fears and hopes. That is fine. The problem begins when the person becomes a mask glued to the face, when you cannot breathe behind it, when you cannot feel the spaciences that is deeper than the mask. Presence shining through means you can still be a person, but you are not trapped inside the person. You can still have a name, a story, a job, a family, a past, but you are not imprisoned by them. They become expressions, not cages. Now the person in our story started to notice how often they were acting from the pain body, meaning old emotional energy that gets triggered and then demands a reaction. When the pain body is active, you feel tight, you feel defensive, you feel urgent, you feel like you must do something right now, or else, or you feel numb and checked out because the system learned to shut down to survive. Presence shining through the person means you can recognize the pain body without obeying it. You can feel the heat in the chest without turning it into sharp words. You can feel the ache of insecurity without turning it into clinging. You can feel the sting of criticism without turning it into self-hatred. You can feel loneliness without turning it into desperate choices. This is where karma becomes visible, because karma is not just what happens after you die, and it is not just cosmic reward and punishment. Karma is the momentum of patterns here and now. Trigger leads to reaction. Reaction leads to consequence. Consequence strengthens identity. Identity creates more triggers. It feels like fate because it repeats, but presence interrupts the chain. Presence creates a pause, and in the pause, you have choice. Choice creates new karma. New karma shapes a new destiny. So the person began to practice presence, not only on the meditation cushion, but in ordinary life, because ordinary life is where patterns are built. They practiced in the morning when the mind tried to grab the phone. They paused. They felt the body. They took one conscious breath, not to be perfect, but to remember. They practiced while brushing teeth, feeling the sensations, hearing the sound of water, letting the moment be simple. They practiced while walking, instead of rushing inside thought. They felt the feet touching the ground. They noticed the air on the face. They listened to sound without labeling. They sensed space, not as an idea, but as a direct experience of openness around everything. They practiced in conversation. This was the most challenging and the most powerful, because in conversation, the person identity loves to perform. It wants to impress. It wants to be right. It wants to defend. It wants to control how it is seen. So the person practiced a new inner posture. While listening, they stayed connected to the inner body. They felt the alleviance in the hands and chest. They kept a small part of attention resting in presence, like an anchor. This changed everything. They became less reactive. They could hear criticism without instantly attacking. They could hear disagreement without turning it into war. They could speak with more care. And when emotions rose, they could notice them as energy, not as commands. This is what it means for presence to shine through the person in daily life. It means you are not just a talking mind. You are a living field of awareness. And when awareness is there, Your words become cleaner. Your tone becomes softer. Your decisions become wiser. Your actions become less contaminated by fear. Now let us talk about why the mind blocks the light, because this is where most people get stuck. The mind blocks presence for the same reason a person keeps turning up the radio when the room is quiet. Silence can feel unfamiliar. Silence can feel like loss of control. Silence can bring you face to face with emotions you avoided. Silence can expose the emptiness of certain pursuits. Silence can reveal grief. Silence can reveal fear. Silence can reveal that you have been chasing substitutes for peace. So the mind keeps talking, it keeps planning, it keeps judging, it keeps narrating, not because it is evil, but because it is conditioned. It learned that constant thinking equals safety. Presence does not attack the mind. Presence simply sees the habit clearly. And when you see clearly, you do not have to obey the habit. The person began to notice a crucial trick of the mind. The mind would say, "This moment is not enough. Get to the next moment." Or it would say, "You cannot be present until you solve this problem." Or it would say, "You need a better technique, a better teacher, a better condition. Then you can be present." But presence is never in the next moment. Presence is always now. So the person practiced catching the trick. When the mind said later, they returned now. When the mind said not enough, they returned now. When the mind said fix first, they returned now. Now means breath. Now means sensation. Now means seeing and hearing. Now means being aware. As this practice deepened, the person discovered something else that changed their relationship with suffering. They realized that the inner sense of self they protected so fiercely was often a bundle of thoughts and feelings, not a solid entity. When they looked for the self as an object, they found images, memories, labels, and sensations, but not a permanent thing. There was personality, yes. There was history, yes. There was preference, yes. But the solid separate self was strangely hard to find. This recognition can feel scary to the ego because the ego wants solidity, but it can feel deeply liberating to awareness because if the self is not as solid as you thought, then you do not have to defend it all the time. You can relax, you can open, you can live with less fear. And as fear reduces, compassion naturally rises. Because when you stop being obsessed with protecting your own image, you have more space to care about others. You begin to see that other people are also trapped in their mind stories. They also have pain bodies. They also react from old wounds. They also crave reassurance. They also fear losing control. This does not mean you accept harmful behavior. It means you understand the mechanism. Understanding makes you less hateful. It makes you wiser. It makes you capable of setting boundaries without poison. Presence shining through the person is compassion in action. It is the ability to be firm without cruelty. It is the ability to say no without hatred. It is the ability to speak truth without needing to humiliate. Now let us move through a longer guided inner journey, but in narrative form, so you can feel it rather than just think about it. Imagine you are sitting here with me. You are listening. Maybe part of you is interested, and part of you is distracted. That is okay. You do not need to fight distraction. Just notice. Distraction is being noticed. That means awareness is already here. Now feel the breath, not as a project, not as something you must control. Just notice the natural breath. The body knows how to breathe. Let it breathe. Now scan attention gently through the body. Feel the hands. Feel the arms. Feel the shoulders. Feel the chest. Feel the belly. Feel the legs. Feel the feet. You are not looking for anything special. You are simply noticing Alevines. Now notice thought. I thought may appear about what you will do later. I thought may appear about whether you are doing this right. A thought may appear about the past. Let it appear and notice it. Awareness knows thought. Now notice the space around the thought. Even when thought is present, there is space. Even when sound is present, there is space. Even when emotion is present, there is space. Rest as that space for a moment, not as a technique, but as recognition. Now the mind might say, I do not get it. That is a thought. Notice it. The mind might say, I need something more dramatic. That is a thought. Notice it. The mind might say, this is boring. That is a thought. Notice it. And now notice something subtle. You are here. You are aware. Without effort, without struggle, there is a simple knowing of this moment. That is presence. Now imagine you stand up and walk into your day with this recognition. You go into a difficult conversation, and the pain body rises. The chest tightens. The urge to defend appears. You want to interrupt, correct, prove, or withdraw. But instead, you feel the body. You breathe. You notice the urge as energy. You do not obey it immediately. You let presence shine through the person. You speak more slowly. You listen more deeply. You choose words that reduce suffering instead of increasing it. That is not weakness. That is mastery. Now imagine you face a setback. Something goes wrong. The mind wants to spiral into story. This always happens. I am doomed. I am not enough. But you notice story as story. You feel the disappointment as sensation. You breathe. You return to presence. Then you take the next practical step without self-hatred. That is also mastery. Now imagine you are alone at night and loneliness appears. The old habit is to escape into stimulation, into scrolling, into distraction, into fantasies, into compulsive thinking. But you pause. You feel the loneliness in the body. Maybe it is a hollow feeling. Maybe it is tightness. Maybe it is sadness. You allow it. You do not dramatize. You do not run. Use it with it as presence, and something shifts. The loneliness becomes less like a monster and more like a wave. It moves, it passes, and in the background, there is a quiet okayness that does not depend on anyone else being there. That is freedom. This is why guided meditations often emphasize allowing presence to shine through the person. The person is the surface-level identity that wants control. Presence is the depth that is already whole. When the depth shines through the surface, your life becomes simpler. Not always easy, but simpler. Less inner conflict. Now I want to address a common fear. People worry that if they live from presence, they will lose ambition, lose personality, lose passion, lose edge. They worry they will become flat. In practice, presence does not remove life energy. It removes unnecessary suffering. It removes compulsive seeking. It removes the need to prove. What remains is often more alive, more creative, more focused, and more loving. Because when you are not wasting energy on inner noise, you have more energy for real action. Presence also changes your relationship to time. When you are trapped in mind, you live in psychological time, the endless replay and rehearsal. When you are present, you live in real time, the only place life actually happens. This does not mean you never plan. It means planning becomes a tool, not a prison. Now let us bring in the deeper spiritual dimension. Still in simple language, many wisdom traditions point to the idea that your true nature is awareness, not your personality, not your thoughts, not your moods. awareness itself. When you touch that, you begin to feel that you are not separate in the way the ego claims. The ego says, I am alone. I am against the world. I must protect myself. Presence reveals a deeper connectance, a shared being. This naturally supports compassion. You start to want less harm in the world. You start to care about how your words land. You start to care about how your choices ripple. You see cause and effect more clearly. This is karma again, but now it becomes personal and practical. You see that when you speak from presence, the conversation tends to settle. When you speak from reactivity, the conversation tends to escalate. When you act from fear, you create more fear. When you act from clarity, you create stability. So presence is not only inner peace, it is ethical power. Now we are moving toward the closing reflection. And I want to share what people often report when they truly taste this kind of presence, because it answers the question of what it feels like when presence shines through. It often feels like a quiet spacience behind the eyes. It feels like the breath is deeper without forcing it. It feels like the body softens, even if life is still challenging. It feels like thoughts are less sticky. Thoughts still come, but they do not hook you as easily. It feels like emotional waves pass more quickly because you are not feeding them with story. It feels like you can be with discomfort without panicking. It feels like you can listen without preparing your defense. It feels like you can pause before reacting. It feels like you are more here. And it also feels humbling, because you realize how much of your suffering was self-created through unconscious thinking, clinging, and resistance. Now let me share a simple, everyday example that often makes this real. Imagine you are washing a cup. Usually the mind is elsewhere, but today you decide to let presence shine through this tiny act. You feel the warm water. You hear the sound. You see reflections. You notice the movement of hands. You are simply here. For a moment, there is no problem, not because problems do not exist, but because the mind is not manufacturing extra problems. There is only this moment, clean, simple, complete. That is the taste. Then later you are stuck in traffic or dealing with someone difficult. The mind wants to complain, but you remember the cup. You remember that presence is possible anywhere. You breathe. You feel the hands on the steering wheel. You notice the tightness. You soften a little. Again, this does not fix the traffic. It frees you from unnecessary suffering. Over time, these small moments accumulate, and one day you notice that you are not living from the same inner place. You are more steady. You are more kind. You are more honest. You are less addicted to drama. You are less controlled by fear. You are more willing to let go. That is awakening in daily form. Thank you for being here with me today. If you felt even a small shift while listening, hold it gently. Do not turn it into a performance. Just remember it and return to it in the next ordinary moment. Now I want to invite you to share in the comments. Where do you most often lose yourself in mental noise? And what is one small situation today where you could practice letting presence shine through the person? If you want more long-form talks and guided style teachings like this, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment to support the community. Your support helps these teachings reach people who are tired of living inside their thoughts and ready to come home to awareness. Until next time, keep returning, keep softening, and remember that presence is not far away. It is the very space in which this moment is happening.